Allan Hirsch Advisors, creating aha moments, presents Aha Business Podcasts. We provide opportunities to discover information to help you run your business and guide your decision making. The more you know, the better decisions you make. For more information, log on to allanhirschadvisors.com. I'm your host, Allan Hirsch. Attention business owners. Has your business suffered financially from COVID-19? If so, let us help. I'm Allan Hirsch, a member of Business Coaches Assembled under a grant from the Small Business Breakthrough Executive Team. Our mission is to help business owners who have seen their revenues negatively impacted by 20% or more due to the virus. We can help you recover $50,000 to $70,000 or more of your lost revenue over the next 90 to 120 days. For more information, go to www.ahaonlinelearning.com to receive my book, 45-Minute Breakthroughs. That's go to www.ahaonlinelearning.com. Welcome to today's podcast. My guest today is Sergiu Simmel. He is the owner of Get Business Momentum, which is a coaching practice in Boston, Massachusetts. What motivates you to get up in the morning and go to work?
First of all, Allan, thank you for having me on your podcast. I'm really appreciative of that. What motivates me is a really strong desire to kind of restore joy. You know, I've been personally involved in a number of businesses. I founded about 3 of them. I've dealt with many businesses, both from the inside and outside. And one of the observation I've made, and I'm talking about entrepreneurial businesses, you know, small, medium-sized businesses. And one observation I made over the course of time is that in most cases, not always, but in most cases, entrepreneurs and the leaders of the business really kind of run around like chicken with their heads off. They lose that joy that should drive any entrepreneur in working in his or her business, and that's something that I need to. I feel compelled to restore, and I have several methods of doing that. But the fundamental thing is that businesses need to operate in a way that actually allows for joy, allows for people to grow, to have satisfaction, and so forth. So really, that's what motivates me. I totally get my my pleasure and my happiness when I actually can impact people that way.
Yeah, well, I feel the same way. I like to make a difference in people's lives, and hopefully for the better.
Exactly.
And it's really a blessing when we do this. So, what brought you here historically? What did you do, and what do you do now? You do coaching, so let's have a little explanation of where it came from.
Sure. Well, I started my first business in 1991. It's been a while. And then my second business in the mid-90s, and that company actually ended up being a $34 million business. By the end, it got sold about 15, 20 years later. So I've been an entrepreneur 3 times. And then I've also been an executive for a number of small, medium-sized businesses. Some of them actually a little bit more mature, but still in the mid-size. Like, for example, I did a turnaround for a software company. My background is in high tech in the Boston area and so forth. So for a while, for the past, maybe 2 decades, I've been actually having my own practice. And about 8 years or so, I came across a book called Traction, written by Gino Wickman. And coincidentally, or depending on your system of beliefs, maybe not so coincidentally, a good friend of mine from the West Coast said to me in a phone conversation, I need to introduce you to somebody. This guy does a lot of process stuff, and I know you are very good at process, and it's true, I am. So he introduced me to then Gino Wickman's business partner. And as they say, there is this history. So about, I don't know, about 9 months later, I was invited to get trained by Gino himself. And what the book was about was essentially a system for operating the business. As my reaction to the book was, oh my God, where was this book when I was actually operating my own business?
Yes.
Exactly.
Well,
Where was it?
yeah, we
And
all run into those things. Where was this or that when I was running my business? 20 years ago.
exactly. And I was so impressed, not only by the system itself and all the components, but actually, and this is one of the biggest takeaways and influences that Gino and his philosophy had on me as a business person and then as a coach, is the value of simplicity. He had this knack of taking complex stuff and then just narrow it down to a number of simple things that can actually be put into practice. Because we have all kinds of complicated things that we do in business, and most of the stuff that we teach people go right over their heads because there's only that much that leaders in businesses can actually internalize and in fact apply on a daily basis. So that was really what captivated me at the time. Besides, what you and I just spoke about, whether how come I didn't know about this 20 years prior? And then, there is this history. So I've started actually working with companies and helping them implement this system. And I've done this for the past 7.5 years, and taken 60 plus companies through the process.
Mm-hmm. So, what do you consider your top three professional mentors? Well, you named one,
Yeah.
or heroes.
Well, so Gino is definitely one. A second one was a teacher and then partner and then friend of mine. His name is Alex Mandozian, and he's a genius marketer. I learned from him in my third business how to actually market content through the internet and through what he, at the time, this is about 10, 12 years ago, we were calling them teleseminars. Now we call them webinars. So it was primarily audio, like as opposed to just the video. There wasn't enough bandwidth to actually do videos. And the primary thing that I learned from Alex, actually I learned many things, but I still remember one of the things that he used to say all the time, which actually had a lot of impact on me, and I'll explain to you in a second. So I used to say, sloppy success is always better than perfect mediocrity.
Sloppy success is always better than mediocrity.
Than perfect mediocrity.
Perfect mediocrity.
So I used to be traditionally a perfectionist. Everything has to be lined up perfectly. And if it doesn't, I would not go and do it. And, that thought percolated within me for years until I actually started to give in this whole, tendency of perfectionism. And things started moving once I managed to do this much better and with much more ease than they used to do before. So that's sort of like a second hero. And then a third one, I wouldn't mention actually a single person. It's sort of like the number of business owners and CEOs, kind of a collective that I've actually engaged with over the past 7 or so years, who taught me actually the human nature of producing transformation and change within businesses. It's sort of like a collective teaching, because when I engage with a client, I don't regard that as a one-way, I'm the teacher, you are the student, but it's actually a two-way street. And I learn from them, of course I teach them some stuff, and I facilitate their teams, and I coach, and I'm the accountability coach for them and the teams. But at the end, they also teach me all the imperfections of the real world of actually running a business. Kind of on the ground. And they keep me sort of on my toes with that teaching. So I really not only respect them, but really owe them that continuous lesson that I'm learning.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things that, we're lifelong learners. We've got to continue to learn because business changes. I
Right.
mean, if we sat still during coronavirus, we wouldn't be doing uh, ourselves justice or anybody else justice. A business that doesn't change and doesn't grow with the times goes backwards.
Exactly.
Just look at Kodak. Uh,
Many others. Many others.
and
Absolutely.
many others that have names that just really didn't do what they needed to do to get to the modern world. Uh, uh, so, what has been your life journey? What's has it been good? Do you enjoy what you do?
Oh, I love what I do now. So in terms of life journey, I was born, uh, unless you haven't figured out from my thick Boston accent, I was not born in Boston. In Boston. I was born and raised in Bucharest, Romania, which at the time was a communist country.
Right.
I managed to defect from communist Romania. I was a student at the time, almost 40 years ago. In fact, this year I'm going to celebrate my 40th anniversary as as an American. Uh,
Congratulations.
Thank you. And maybe those 40 years were the 40 years through the wilderness or the desert. So I'm
Right.
just about to cross the border into the promised land.
Well, and the Passover is this Saturday, so uh,
Exactly.
yeah, that's the right time.
Absolutely. Quite fitting. Why do you think that's on my mind now?
Right.
So, and I went to, I had family in Minnesota, so I landed in Minnesota with my family. I went to graduate school there, and then in 1986 I moved to the Boston area for a job, and basically, I've mentioned to you what my professional journey has been, but really the best part of the journey is raising two beautiful daughters, and now I'm the proud grandfather of two beautiful grandsons, and that's essentially what I consider to be the biggest accomplishment of my life.
Well, I agree with you. I've raised two wonderful daughters and four grandchildren, two daughters and two granddaughters and two grandsons. So it's wonderful to have that kind of legacy.
Absolutely, absolutely, and the thing that I keep repeating in my head is that at the end of the day or at the end of the life, nobody's going to ask me how many business deals I've done. Ultimately, is the legacy, as you put it very aptly, Alan. What's actually the impact on the next generation after that, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I believe in helping businesses, helping people improve their lives.
Mhm.
I like making a difference in their lives. And when I can make a difference in someone's lives, I'm making it in their world. Now, I leave a legacy there, but and with all the people that are involved. But my true legacy, yes, is with my family.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I share those feelings exactly.
Hmm. So, uh, what do you think is the number one issue facing entrepreneurial businesses today?
Well, uh, interesting question. And this may not surprise any of your listeners, or may. But the number one issue that's facing all businesses are people. You know the joke that's somebody interviews a CEO and asks the question, so how does it feel to run this business? And he says, it feels quite good, but if I could just get rid of all the employees, it would be so much better, so much better. So,
Yes, but that's also a major problem.
of
You get
course,
rid of the employees and your business collapses, but that's another story.
absolutely. So it's really the way I put it, Alan, is that 95+% of all business issues are ultimately at the root cause people issues. They disguise themselves as something else. People complain about, I don't know, the product, the market, the customers, the supply chain, the funding, the investors, the board, the data. But at the end of the day, when you have an issue in your business, somebody somewhere didn't do or did do something. So it's ultimately having the right people in the right seats. And to a large extent, I would say that's what helping companies implement the entrepreneurial operating system is all about, is ultimately giving them the tools and the processes so that they actually can operate this collective of folk, of people inside the organization right. And that means many things, means whether the organizational structure is the right one, means if you have culturally the right people to into the business or into the organization, so they all of them embrace or display most of the core values of the business most of the time. If they actually have a fitness to the function or the job or the seat, as we call them, that they occupy within the organization. If their behavioral patterns are the ones that we would desire for a particular seat, having somebody, who's actually a highly introverted person being in a function or in a job that's client facing, most of the time doesn't quite work too well, as you know. So all this stuff actually matters at individual level, but it also matters at the team level, having this whole awareness of what kind of typology your team is and how does the team that you are belonging to, for example, the leadership team, relate to the business goals or strategies that need to be implemented. And very often, there is a gap that needs to be actually fixed. And, leaders sometimes spend most of their time dealing with other issues and not as much with people issues, which is kind of almost like the biggest, what I would call, people, quandrum. I mean, it makes no sense to spend most of your time as a CEO, for example, dealing with issues that don't relate to people, because ultimately it's the people that will actually make it or break it in your organization.
Yeah. So let's take a break now. And when we come back, I'll continue the conversation with Sergiu Simmel of Get Business Momentum. I'm Allan Hirsch of Allan Hirsch Advisors, and this has been AHA Business Podcasts.
Hi, Rick Dempsey here. As a former Oriole and Series MVP, I know a lot about winning and championship teams. Today, I'm happy to tell you about my award-winning web design and internet marketing team, Adventure Web Interactive. For over 2 decades, many of Maryland's most successful firms have chosen Adventure Web as their strategic partner for web design and online marketing. I can tell you from using them personally, their search engine optimization and social media programs have saved their clients tens of thousands over the traditional pay-per-click digital agency. Visit AdventureWebInteractive.com and listen to what clients such as Hercules Fence, TriStar Electric, ABC Rental, Rhine Landscaping, Markdown's Office Furniture, and many more highly successful firms have to say. And don't forget to tell them Rick Dempsey sent you.
Strengthen, protect, and preserve your retirement nest egg. Scott Garceau here for the Stephen J. Sless Group, Baltimore's reverse mortgage specialist. Reverse mortgages have evolved to become a viable retirement tool. Enjoy retirement without monthly mortgage payments, improve cash flow, pay off debt, and stretch retirement savings. Stephen and his team can offer strategies to make housing wealth work for you. If you're 62 or older, learn if a reverse mortgage could help. Visit reversebaltimore.com.
An equal housing opportunity lender. This is not a commitment to lend. Stephen J. Sless, NMLS 298581. PRMI NMLS 3094.
Welcome back to the show. My guest today is Sergiu Simmel, from the owner of Get Business Momentum. And we're talking about business coaching and his experiences with coaching. So how do you serve your clients today?
So in several ways, the core of my practice is ultimately working with the leadership team mostly, and having them implement this suite of tools and processes, which we refer generically as a business operating system, or a system for operating the business. And then in addition to that, as I mentioned earlier, focus a lot on the people side of the business. So I use a couple of platforms that enable me to not only get my clients the self-awareness or their awareness of what kind of patterns exist in the way they do work, or other colleagues of them do work, or the team does work, but also the awareness or the matching between the nature of the teams, starting with the leadership team that they have, and the business goals that are at hand. So, and I work primarily with entrepreneurial businesses. So for me, the most important part is the organizational size. Typically, businesses from 10 people to about 500 people. I've had clients that were slightly larger, clients that are slightly smaller, but that's sort of like the sweet spot, if you wish. And they are in any industries. I mean, I've had clients ranging from, one of the largest dairy farms in Midtown New York, Manhattan, high-tech marketing firms, and anything in between, and any geography. In fact, right now, client a couple of months ago that's mostly located in Southern California, but I have clients that are international as well, where the leadership team is in 3 countries.
Yeah, well, I've converted during this coronavirus and been networking. I mean, doing a podcast rather than a local radio show, which I did. And I've got clients in South Africa, Scotland, Utah, and it's expanded my practice tremendously.
Exactly. So this is the silver lining of the pandemic, right?
Yeah, and I'm still servicing my clients here, and I don't have to visit them, which takes, for a 1 hour time, it sometimes takes 3 hours.
Exactly.
And I can have 3 appointments with 3 different clients in that time frame. So it's been transformative. But you work with clients, and so who are your clients and why do they come to you?
Well, obviously, the ultimate decision to engage with me is that of the business owner or CEO.
Yes.
So I'm going to refer to her or him as sort of the client, even though ultimately the whole organization is the client. And, these owners and CEOs experience a number of frustrations in their business. And so there are certain kind of typical frustrations that lead them to think that I could actually help them overcome those frustrations. So one of them basically is a frustration of control. They feel that instead of them being in control of the business, almost like the business controls them. So this is the firefighting kind of constant firefighting modality, where basically, I ask actually sometimes entrepreneurs say, when you started the business, did you think that you are going to spend 80% of your time putting out fires? And of course, the answer is always no. That's not why people start businesses.
That's right.
It's not started
for quality. Most people started for quality of life.
Exactly. And they lose it almost instantaneously.
Instantaneously. Absolutely right.
So that's and in my mind, that's nuts. That's crazy. It's
Right.
got, and they also have the attitude that, it's part of business, that's natural. And I respectfully and lovingly tell them, I beg to differ. There are ways to actually restore that joy. So that's one frustration. Another type of frustration is frustration with people. It's my team, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. They don't seem to get me. They are not performing as a team at the level of performance that I expect. They don't seem to be on the same page, et cetera, et cetera. There's a third frustration that has to do to get down to the basics of business with profit. And what I mean by that is lack thereof. We are growing top line tremendously, and I'm still losing money, or the profit is minuscule, and so forth. And of course, a lot of that comes from the fact that the operation or the company, the organization doesn't run well. And of course, there's a lot of waste in the process. And no matter how solid your gross margins are, at the end of the day, it's the net margin that actually matter.
Absolutely. It is. And one of the things that I find, people have never raised prices. Just the thought of raising prices,
Exactly.
and gives them the chance to increase their bottom line tremendously.
So, and of course, so all of that, so these are just three examples of kinds of frustrations. Of course, there are more that make people think that, they need to actually change something drastically. And, especially for entrepreneurial businesses, Allan, businesses that grow, things that used to work when we were 36 people, and now we are 120, stop working. And many business owners and CEOs don't understand how come. They used to work just fine, and they're trying to apply the same kinds of structures and the same kinds of processes of running the business now at 120 or or 237 people that they used to work at when there were 36 people. And businesses go through this evolutionary kind of sequence of stages.
Right. They go through stages, and unless a CEO, and this is where part of the CEO's responsibility is prepared to delegate.
Exactly. And in fact, it's interesting that you're bringing that up, because there is a particular tool inside the EOS toolbox called Delegate and Elevate.
Right.
So essentially, you are delegating stuff that you used to do in order to elevate your own performance so that you can spend more time and energy with what you are really great at, as opposed to what you sometimes
think you're great at.
Well, great at, or you are kind of mediocre at, or very often you really, excuse my French, suck at.
Right.
So that's
it's a matter of trying to. I mean, I had one client who came out of the military as a sergeant, and he basically took that leadership style, which said, when you're busy, you lead the forces. You go out and work on the, and his business was just flat. It was flat for 10 years. It took him 6 months to realize that what he thought was his greatest skill was actually suffocating his business. And so he started delegating. And once he started delegating, the next 2 years, his business increased 400%.
Exactly. And there is another interesting phenomenon. Many founders of businesses, entrepreneurial founders, at some point in time choose, and sometimes even from the beginning, to choose to bring in somebody to operate the business. So who in their minds would have the accountability to run the business. But here's what happens, is that it's very difficult for them, for most of them, primarily from a kind of emotional perspective, to actually let go. In other words, to give that person not only the accountability to run the business, but also the authority. I have a client right now that I'm dealing with exactly that problem, where you have a very strong leader. In the EOS terminology, we call them a visionary, and also very strong integrator, which is the other function. And this duo could actually be, literally the rocket fuel for the business. But there's there's very much of a resistance on the part of the visionary to actually let the integrator really run the business. So that is a process that's challenging for many entrepreneurs. But one thing that I try to get across to them is that without that, essentially they are doomed to be capped to what they can only do.
Right. And unless they're prepared, I mean, you look at, well, Apple's an example, but they became a great company because Steve Jobs delegated it. He directed at the top, but he didn't run finance. He didn't run marketing. He insisted that they stick with why they do what they do, which is to think differently. And everything else, he relied on people to do the work, the inventions. And it's the most profitable company in the world, and it's the most highly capitalized today.
Absolutely. That's
and because he learned to give in. When he brought in outside management, they almost killed it because they went away from the why, but that's another story. But it's over and over again. You've got to delegate. You get to these businesses get to these plateaus where they can't grow without the head again setting up another set of delegations.
Exactly.
So why should business leaders, I mean, getting to this, how they focus on business operations when there are so many external challenges? So they be focusing on external or focusing on the business operations?
Well, the way I think about this, Allan, is that, a business is essentially subject to kind of a push-pull type of, forces all the time. There's the pull of the markets, and that's basically making sure that you have the right service or the right product for the right market at the right time. And sometimes, the pull is so strong that, the business grows because there's so much demand. And then internally, it's chaos. And then what happens is that occasionally that pull has hiccups or actually starts slowing down. Now, one ginormous hiccup is, for example, what do we call those? A pandemic. Oh my God.
Right.
So there is slower pull. Well, if you are prepared, so if your internal matters are actually well taken care of, then you can actually continue to grow from the push part, from the business itself, because you operate very well. And remember, growth is not necessarily top line growth. What I'm always focused on is ultimately the net profit. That's what I mean, really, real growth. So to answer your question about why the internal operations are equally important to the focus on the external. Well, there are several things. One is what I just said. Another one is basically the quality of your life as a leader in the business. Do you want to live in chaos no matter how much money you make or how much pull you have to? It's if you really are honest with yourself, the answer is always no. I don't want chaos. I don't want all this, running around. So having things that are actually proactive, where people literally give a lot of thought and they know how to really move the business forward, gain traction in a systematic way, is ultimately the sign of a great leadership. And to use your example with Apple or any other successful company out there, whether it's a large enterprise or a small entrepreneurial business, we know that at some point in time there is also a cash out opportunity, whether that's going public or selling the company to a larger company or whatever. And when somebody actually goes through an M&A type of event, one of the important things about valuation is how well the company runs. Because when somebody buys a business to operate it, and it's true that not all purchases of businesses are with intention of operating them, but setting that aside, when somebody buys a business to operate it, of course, one looks very carefully as to how much investment and how much money they have to put in to actually fix the operation. And if the operations run smoothly, guess what? Your valuation goes up. I've had several clients that went through very successful M&A transactions. It's a bittersweet situation for me because it's sweet because they tell me how much the work that we've done together contributed to their high valuations. It's bitter because they usually stop being my clients because now they're part of a large enterprise and they don't, they don't need me anymore. So that's another reason to actually focus on how well you operate.
Yeah, I mean, it's a business that doesn't get to a certain point, doesn't have middle management that can take over. If someone wants to come in and operate, is not worth necessarily purchasing. And we are approaching, with this pandemic beginning to end, we're approaching the end of the baby boomers, when 2/3 of all businesses in this country are owned by baby boomers, and they're getting older. They're getting to, they're getting to 75 years old, and there are not enough buyers out there to take care of these companies. So you've got to grow them. And you've got to make them profitable and well run.
Exactly. So there will be a plethora of M&A transactions over the next 5 to 10 years, and there'll be a lot of competition. So it's really a buyer's market, not a seller's market.
Right.
So in order to position your business the right way, so you can actually become a desirable business, there are many components to that. Of course, there is governance. Of course, there is product and market and service, but there is also operations.
Right. There are. And well, I want to thank you for your time today and your advice to businesses, and I appreciate it. How can businesses and listeners out there reach you?
Well, so one place to go is to, of course, LinkedIn, where we all live, right? So it's, my name is spelled Sergiu, and the last name is Simmel. So just look me up on LinkedIn, or you can reach me by email at sss@getbusinessmomentum.com, or you can actually just give me a call, 617-731-3132. I'm always eager to pick up the phone and have a conversation with great business leaders or business owners.
Well, thank you very much for your time today and for being a guest on the podcast. I'm Allan Hirsch of Allan Hirsch Advisors, your host. To reach me, visit my website at www.ahaonlinelearning.com. And you can register to get my book, 45-Minute Breakthroughs. You can listen to the podcast of past shows wherever you get your podcasts by subscribing to AHA Business Podcast. You may email me at www.allanhirsch@advisors.com. I'm Allan Hirsch, and this has been AHA Business Podcast.